Hello everyone! Thank you for visiting our channel. Have you ever experienced such like stories? Haley had just started her studies at university when she met her future husband Michael. He was older than her, on his final year, and the object of affection for all the female students. Michael was a tall and charming young man with beautiful curly hair. He immediately noticed the cute freshman who hid her face behind a pile of red hair and big glasses. Haley was very shy, hardly talked to anyone, and always sat far away from her group in the cafeteria. One day, Michael sat next to her and started chatting. He knew how to engage any girl in a conversation, but Haley smiled and remained silent. During lunch, she only uttered a few words, but Michael didn't give up. He sat next to her every day, talked about anything, sometimes shared stories about himself, and asked questions. After a month, they became inseparable, and Haley started looking more confident. The graduation, thesis defense, and exams were approaching. Fourth-year students attended the university less and less and were increasingly occupied with work, internships, and preparation for the defense. Haley confided in her friend and told him how much she missed him. "I'm sorry we don't see each other as often," she told Michael. They were sitting in an alley next to the university. The spring air stirred their minds and evoked the most pleasant memories associated with this beautiful time. "But I have a proposal for you," the boy smiled. He waited for a moment, looking expectantly at Haley, and then leaned in and kissed her. 12 years have passed since that moment, and now they are both in their 30s, married with 2 children. Everyday life had taken over their lives. Sometimes they didn't even have time to talk after work and discuss how their day went. They were too busy. "Hi," whispered Michael. He lay down, exhausted after work. His eyes were already closing, but he pushed himself to talk to his wife for a little bit. Haley smiled. How was his day? She put aside her knitting and took his hand. After chatting about their day, Michael left, leaving Haley alone. Haley worked as a teacher at the university where she and Michael had graduated. She returned there this academic year, after trying out many professions before. After her own education, she didn't want to be a teacher. "I'm not ready," she told her husband. "I don't want to see the walls of that institution again. Besides you, they didn't bring me anything good." Michael smiled. "Make them bring something good to someone else. Maybe they need you there." Haley spent a couple of years trying to find herself, but eventually gave up and returned to teaching. She was given a group to be a curator of freshmen, young, former high school students. Haley looked at them with envy since she was no longer as young and fresh as they were. Everything was ahead of them, while she was a 30-year-old married woman with 2 children and an unloved job. Haley enjoyed talking to her students. Sometimes they would stay after class and chat over tea. Over time, students started sharing their secrets with her. Haley appreciated this and began to think that her job was not the worst one. Once after the last class, all the students scattered to their own business. It was deep autumn, cold, and rain mixed with snow, and everyone was in a hurry to get home. Someone knocked on the door of the classroom. "Mrs. Williams." The door opened slightly, and through the crack, Haley saw one of her students, Ryan. She was also getting ready to go home. Michael had been with the kids all day. They were sick, and he took a sick day for himself. Haley was happy to agree. She had no desire to stay at work, and for once, she and her husband could sit and talk for a while in the evening. "Please hurry, I need to go home. I need to ask you something." The guy walked up to the table where Haley was filling out the last paperwork. She smiled politely, sincerely hoping that the question would not take too much time. Ryan was a handsome guy. He was liked by girls, and they openly told him that. He was practically swimming in their attention. Just like Michael, Haley always thought about herself. Ryan was attractive to her. He helped her without question when it was required, was responsive and kind. He continued to stand next to her, losing the drawstring of his sweatshirt in his hands, and then said so quickly that Haley did not immediately understand what he said. "Can I kiss you?" As soon as the phrase ended, he immediately leaned towards her and touched her lips. No one knows what was going on in Haley's head at that moment, but she did not push him away. On the contrary, she leaned forward to respond to the kiss. But then she still pushed the guy away, and she herself sat for a long time, digesting what had just happened. A week later, the situation repeated itself. Ryan came after class when the building was empty of students. Haley asked him to leave. She had already started to explain to him why it was wrong, why it could not continue. But Ryan interrupted her, taking control of her body. This continued until the very end of the semester. After the New Year holidays, Haley decided to end her meetings with her student, despite her desires. Although she missed him, the intimacy with her husband did not provide her with the same emotions and satisfaction she received from meeting with the student. She returned to the university with a firm intention to end it all. As always, someone knocked on her door. She knew who it was and what was about to happen. "I missed you, Mrs. Williams," Ryan said. The key that Haley always left in the door clicked. They stood embracing each other for a few minutes. When Ryan tried to reach under her blouse, she abruptly stopped him. "It's not worth it. We need to break up for our common good," she said. They talked for a long time. Ryan was boiling, trying to prove to Haley that they were better off together and that their breakup would only bring problems to everyone. She ignored his words and insisted that he leave. After that, she cried for another hour sitting at the table. The next morning, Haley woke up to something bad. When she answered, she heard an angry voice demanding her immediate presence at work. Haley rushed into the dean's office. He was sitting behind his desk, and the vein on his forehead was pulsating with anger. "How old are you? Do you think with your head about what you're doing?" The man yelled at her. Haley didn't understand what was happening, but then he literally threw his phone in her face. On the screen were photos of her and Ryan. The guy took them secretly from Haley. In one photo, they were kissing. In another, he was hovering over the table with Haley lying on it. In the third, she was on her knees, and he was holding her by the hair. She didn't scroll any further. Fear paralyzed her. She pressed her palm to her mouth. Tears flowed down her cheeks. Her phone vibrated in her purse. It was Michael. She saw many messages and 3 missed calls from him. It seems that these photos are now not only with the dean. On the street near the university, her husband was waiting for her. He stood next to his car, nervously smoking one cigarette after another, watching as the students looked at something on their phone screens and laughed. On one hand, he felt sorry for his wife, who had received such terrible notoriety, but on the other hand, he understood that she had earned it. Haley ran out of the university, covering her face. But the young people still pointed at her and laughed. Someone shouted hurtful words. They got into the car with her husband and drove away from the scene. Michaelia was shouting, and Haley was crying. When the flow of words subsided, they just sat there, each lost in their own thoughts. Haley, having calmed down, tried to apologize to her husband, but he was inflexible. A month later, they received a divorce certificate and lived separately. The children temporarily lived with Michaelia because Haley had to leave their small town where the notoriety of the teacher who seduced a student had spread everywhere. She was often recognized in stores, and sometimes even on the street. Some adult women considered it their duty to express to her what she had become. It killed her, and with each passing day, she sank deeper into depression. In another city, she had to start her life from scratch. She missed her children, but she had no choice. The search for a new job dragged on because besides teaching, she didn't know how to do anything else, but she couldn't go back there again. Money was running out, and often in the evenings, she gave in to her helplessness in her cheap rented apartment. But this was the price for her own actions, which she now had to pay. What do you think about this situation? Share your thoughts in the comments. And thank you for listening to the story until the end. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and be sure to like this video, as it will help us promote the channel. All the best.